Nailing down Donald Trump on an opinion or policy is sort of like playing presidential whack-a-mole. Too slow, and he's popped up in an entirely new place with an entirely new outlook on life. When the week began, we knew two things for certain: that Trump felt exactly zero need to testify before Bob Mueller, and that a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants was off the table. Then came yesterday, when he was asked again about whether he would testify.
I would love to do it. In person. You know, again, I have to say, subject to my lawyers and all of that, but I would love to do it.
To reach a higher standard, you would do it under oath.
Oh, I would do it under oath, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, that was new. And on undocumented immigrants who were brought here as young kids, he changed his tune on that, too.
Do you want citizenship for Dreamers?
We're going to morph into it. It's going to happen at some point in the future.
Morph into it?
Over a period of 10 to 12 years, somebody does a great job. They've worked hard. It gives incentive to do a great job.
I'd say a complete 180 on two major issues, but can he pirouette again before the sun rises in Davos? Joining me are Jesse Mermell, former communications director for Governor Deval Patrick. Nice to see you, Jesse.
Hey,
Bob Hedlund, former Republican state senator, who is now the mayor of Weymouth. Mr. Mayor, it's good to see you. Should we trust either of these new positions, or are they here today and gone tomorrow?
I think you can pretty much trust him. I mean, he's in Davos, right? He's been consistent over there, talking about trade policy. So
one day.
Well,
I
mean, he's been consistent on trade policy. He's in
yes,
Davos now,
that's
but he's
true.
been
Yes,
consistent on that issue throughout his tenure.
But he hasn't
so
been
far.
consistent on these things in a whole bunch. I mean, for example, here's Breitbart's headline today: Immigration shock, Amnesty Don, they call him now, suggests citizenship for illegal aliens. That's not going to scare him back to the conservative wing of his party?
Well, I think he's demonstrated that he's willing to talk about DACA, and he obviously as part of a bigger immigration deal. And he likes to make deals, so if he gets what he wants on the wall and border security, you never know.
Well, the thing Donald Trump has demonstrated is that he can't be consistent. And if past his prologue, we have no reason to believe the game of whack-a-mole is over.
Well, wait a second. How about Chuck Schumer? You can have the wall. No, you can't have the wall, because Schumer was embarrassed with the, quote, Schumer cave on the shutdown. He offers Donald Trump billions for his wall, and then he withdraws it. Now he is given away. It seems to me he gives the wall. He gets DACA in return, doesn't he?
But the flip side of that is he offered the wall, and the Republicans said it wasn't good enough. So that's the number one thing that the White House and the Republicans have been saying since the campaign they cared about. And if they're negotiating in good faith, why wasn't that enough?
You know, Chuck Todd from Meet the Press was on the radio with us today, and he said what he hears is there's going to be a split-the-baby deal on DACA. If you registered for DACA, you're going to be covered by whatever the Trumpian plan is. If you didn't, mostly people in those circumstances say they were too scared to actually register. You won't be covered. Democrats couldn't buy such a deal and get away with it, could they?
Why in the world would you punish people who came here illegally as children, were brought here illegally as children, whether or not they registered and filled out the right paperwork, especially, by the way, when you look at the family implications and you look at the economic implications of the way those people are contributing.
Will the Democrats hold the line on this and go for the whole loaf?
I certainly hope they do.
You know, can we just change gears for a second? You know, Donald Trump is called the press enemy of the people. There's this the CNN being body slammed tweet, and then there's the tweet of him sitting in his car limousine winning with on his foot a CNN with blood crushed under his foot. You know, it's funny for a second until a 19-year-old from Michigan calls CNN 22 times, mentions the term fake news, and said he's going to come to kill all these people. Is it not fair to make a connection there and to say, just like that young guy, I think from the Carolinas, came to Comet Ping Pong Pizza and fired a shot in a crowded pizza parlor, that this is in response to the grotesquely irresponsible rhetoric from the president about the media? Is that not a fair statement?
I wish he executed a little more diplomacy in everything he does. But, you know, you talk about threats to the press. I mean, we're coming off a couple of administrations that were no friend of the press either, you know, in terms of protecting First Amendment rights.
Well, that part is true. That's a fair statement about Barack Obama, but it is not fair to say...
But nothing from the Obama administration led to someone calling CNN 20-plus times, making death threats about showing up in Atlanta and shooting people, and quoting the president and talking about fake news. You can't even come close to comparing the two.
We have people shooting up schools regardless of what the administration is. We have wackos that make threats.
And certainly without any help from the administration stopping those shootings.
And hang the actions of a lunatic on the president. Maybe it's justified, maybe it isn't.
You know, speaking of that shooting, unless I missed it, and I may have, and I'm sure one of you correct me, did the president tweet about the shooting?
Not that I've seen.
Does that not trouble both of you, regardless of where he is on gun control or bump stocks or wherever he is? Is that not troubling?
I didn't know if he tweeted on it or not. I don't really read his tweets.
He hadn't on at least a day, and it appears he hasn't since.
I think it's disappointing. You know, this is a loss of life among teenagers in Kentucky who were shot in a supposedly safe place in their own schools. And of all the things he can tweet about, he can't take a moment to express sympathy.
And if he did tweet about it, you'd have the other party probably criticizing the content of the tweet, which has happened when he's tweeted on other matters and trying to extend sympathy in other instances. And people have said it doesn't go far enough,
he takes it as a moment to talk about how he was right.
Yeah,
he makes it about
I'm
him,
a little more
not
concerned
about
some bigger issues that face the country than whether he tweeted on a particular instance or not.
Well, you know, it seems to me one bigger issue that confronts the country is this whole FBI mess with tens of thousands of missing text messages between a lawyer and an agent in the FBI, now transferred away from the investigations, who are not crazy about Donald Trump. And while Senator Johnson, who's head of Homeland Security, sort of backed off this thing about this secret society, or you're going to give out, this is the lawyer to the agent, her lover, seems kind of depressing. Maybe it should just be the first meeting of the secret society. While the conventional wisdom is now that that was a cute or uncute joke, isn't it fair for Republicans to be concerned about what that actually means and whether there really was an intention to create an alternative shadow government because they couldn't stand Donald Trump? You're making a face, but if it was the flip side, and they said that, which, by the way, the Republicans did on the night Barack Obama was elected, wouldn't you be screaming bloody murder?
I don't know that I'd be screaming bloody murder. I think it's fair to ask questions. These are people who are public servants. I'd point out that as these texts have been critical of Donald Trump, they've also been critical of a whole bunch of people on the other side. So they're equal opportunity critics.
Well, they're not equal opportunity. The two of them couldn't stand Donald Trump, which is perfectly fine, but they're tweeting about it texting about it back and forth. And then one of them is texting about the first meeting of the secret society. If I said it, I would have said it as a joking kind of thing. But they're in the FBI.
I'm not saying it isn't fair to ask questions, but the extent to which the Republican Party is blowing this up into some massive conspiracy theory is a bit, more than a bit, overblown.
You know, one other thing that's happened the last couple of days, which I found to be rather strange, particularly now as he's going to Davos, is while you're not a Trumpian Republican, you are a Republican, you're conservative on fiscal matters, a lot of business guys are saying trickle-down economics, a la this tax cut, is actually trickling down. This may be the one that actually works. Do you subscribe to that notion, or are these just business guys who are happy because their tax rates were cut by 15%?
Well, I don't call the tax cut trickle-down economics.
But it is. That's what he intends.
No, I think leaving money back in the hands of businesses and individuals is helpful to the economy.
Well, what's the point if it doesn't trickle down?
And I think repatriating some of the offshore money has been helpful to the economy.
Isn't it possible that that's exactly what's going to happen, by the way? That money is going to be repatriated, that some businesses are already talking about expanding in the United States. Thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of workers are getting mostly bonuses, not pay increases as such. There is at least some initial sense this may be beneficial to the middle class. Isn't that fair to say?
I think there are things that are being represented as being helpful to the middle class. For example, there's a 12.5% tax credit for businesses who offer paid family leave as part of this bill. But if you look at it more deeply, it's not a big enough tax credit to actually encourage businesses to make that change and to take on that cost. So I think there are a lot of things that can easily be spun to be helping people, but when you actually dig deep and see how they'll make a true impact, it's insignificant and it's only rewarding businesses. I don't worry that it may work, because if it works and it genuinely does help the middle class, wonderful, but I don't expect that to
happen. President Obama talked about the fact we had the highest corporate tax rate in the world, wanted to see the offshore money repatriated, talked about it, accomplished nothing on it, and we've got someone that's done that, and it's having a positive effect on the economy.
At least in the short term. Okay,
in the short term, while the middle class tax cuts benefit the middle class and they will expire, the ones that don't expire are the ones that benefit corporations.
That is factually true.
You know, we can't examine this with a short-term lens.
Two quick political comings and goings potentially. John Kerry, Secretary of State, former candidate Kerry, allegedly told the Palestinians he was thinking of running again in 2020. Look at the look on your face. Good or bad idea?
All I know is the former Kerry staffers I've talked to aren't packing their bags for Iowa yet.
So you don't. So what do you think?
Oh, man. You know.
Would you support him? Could you support him?
I think we should narrow down to one Massachusetts candidate.
Okay. Can we talk?
I'm going to alienate some of my Republican friends. I like John Kerry.
Wait. Do you know
I
anything
thought
about
I would vote for him for president, but this is pie in the sky.
Do you know anything about your former boss? He's in the New York Times.
He is in the New York Times.
In a long interview.
I know he's enjoying having some time and some privacy and getting to spend some time with his grandson out in San Francisco.
Finally, Linda Dorsina-Fori, former colleague of yours, stepping down to, and huge upside, most people thought, stepping down to join Suffolk Construction and John Fish. What should we read into that?
I know both of the folks. My old Babe Ruth League teammate, John Fish, a man amongst boys. I don't think anyone got a hit off him in 3 years.
But that's not why she's going. She hates hosting the South Boston breakfast?
I don't know, but I think she's a very friendly person, personable, good interaction, and obviously will probably be an asset to the company.
15 seconds. Somebody in the newsroom said after they read it, this confirms that Stan Rosenberg has a really good shot of returning as Senate president because it's the job she wants and now knows she can't get. You buy that?
I think those are too complicated tea leaves. She's got a big family, a lot of mouths to feed, and I think she's looking to support her family and move on to a new challenge. And what does this mean for the breakfast just 6 or 7 weeks away?
Ooh,
that's a bigger question.
Nice to see you. Boy, well, that suspense is almost too much to bear. Mr. Mayor, good to see you, too.